Alright, so here's a breakdown of how I would do some of the stuff in the Steptracker free response question. Basically say write the entire class with everything. So first thing I do is put the header on there for my class. The second thing I do is put a spot for instance variables. I'm doing comments, and it doesn't clearly say which instance variables we'll use, so we have to kind of search through here and see what do we need. Definitely going to need an instance variable here to have your active steps that need to be set. So we're going to we'll figure out a private variable for that. So I would say maybe active step goal or step goal. How about that? Private step, private int step goal, because I don't think we're counting partial steps. So int step goal. Okay. And then we search through here for what else they did. So you set a step goal when you first make your new object. So this gives me an idea of what my constructor is going to look like. And then active days. So there must be something that's recording how many active days. Okay, so private. And that would be another int. What should we call that? Active days, total active days. How about num days active, or num days act. Okay, you can name it whatever you want. So I got something to track the number of days, something to track my goal, and then average steps. So average steps would be when we're going to average these out. So that's a method. So what do you need to make an average? I need my total number of steps to be recorded and number of days. If I'm going to do an average, I want total steps divided by days. So that right there tells me I need another int for total steps, and I need another. See how they're all private? Total days. Okay, so far that's a lot of variables. Let's look through what else they want and see if there's any other variables we need. Add daily steps. That would be, I don't need another variable for that because that's just going to add into my total steps. Active days I already have. So far I don't see anything else I need, but I'm going to leave a little room in case I got to come back to that. So when we do our constructor here, we're going to go down, constructor, and they kind of give you a blueprint on how to make that constructor right here. You're going to say public Steptracker, oops, capital T. And then inside is going to be an int that stands for your step goal. You could probably make this a final variable if you wanted, so it didn't change. But if I don't write a method to change it, I don't see how you could change it. So, I'm going to put step goal SG because I don't want to use this dot. So we're going to enter that in, and then we're going to say step goal equals SG. Okay. And we could set our number of days. We should set all the other ones as we go. So we're going to have our step goal. We're going to have number of days active, num days act equals 0. We're going to have total steps equals 0 and total days equals 0. Try not to forget your semicolons and stuff like that. So that should get you going. That's your constructor. And now, at least they were kind and they told you you have to make add daily steps, active days, and average steps, which you can kind of see how they work here. So I'm going to pause this and kind of do some work and then come back and explain what I was thinking. I put a spot for all the methods, and I wrote the 3 methods we need in the order they did. You don't have to, but I knew to put void here for add daily steps because you see nothing returned anytime you have add daily steps, right? So if there's nothing returned, you put void. And I also noticed there's always a parameter added in there, so I put integer steps. This one is a little more work in here, so I'm going to go to the second one. Public int active days. And notice active days returns a 0, so I know it's an int, whereas average steps is going to return a double. So if you look at this, I can look at all those outputs and see no output means void, integer returned, I'll put int there, and a double returned, I'm putting double for average steps. The easiest of these 3 to do is active days. It's like a getter. Basically, all it does is get how many days have already been passed. We have a private variable called number of days active, so all I have to do on that one is return num days active. Okay, so that one's the easiest of the 3. These 2 are a little more work. The average, we've done averages before, you just got to be careful with that whole weird rounding thing that Java does. So let's go to the weirdest, the newest one, adding daily steps. So you're going to get the steps number, and the weird thing is you think, at first when you look at this, you think the only thing you have to do is take your total steps and just put on plus equal steps. That's what most people would do at first. And you wouldn't be wrong. You definitely have to. Total steps. What did I call it? Total steps. From up here, total steps equals or plus equals steps. But if that's all you did, you'd miss some points here because you also need to add a day, right? So I need to have my total days go up by 1. And I also need to keep track of whether or not that counted as an active day or not, because we're going to return active days. So only if this number of steps is greater than my goal do I add 1 to active days. So you make a little if statement here. If your steps is greater than step goal, then you add 1 to number of days active. If it's not, you don't need an else here because you're just doing nothing afterwards. Num days active plus plus. So that was a little more involved, especially if you just thought when you first look at it, total steps plus equals steps, because there'd be no way to get averages of active days. So you got to do those 2 extra things. And this one has an if statement in it. So that was probably the hardest one. Then you go down here to your average, and most people would do this. They go, okay, I need to return a double. So I'm going to write it down here because there's something you need to do above it that you would lose 1.4. Most people would jump right to here and say, okay, I know how to take an average. You just make sure you cast one of these integers into a double, and I would take my total steps. Did I name them total steps? Yep, total steps. And I would divide it by my total days, right? And if that's all you did, then you would miss something, because what if somebody ran this first line of average steps at 0? If you did this, you would be dividing by 0, and you would get an error. So they're going to check, do you know two things. One, do you know about casting? And two, do you know about how to protect against that that days equaling 0? And it's a really easy protection. You just say if total days equals 0, then we're going to return 0.0. And if that's not true, it just jumps right to here. So this is a little protection. You would lose a point if you didn't protect against an error of divide by 0, because it shows you it works. It doesn't show any error. So I think that's it. That should be pretty good. And that's writing a whole class. Good stuff, man. So hope that helped.